in the last 24 hours, seemingly, of him maybe at a strip joint, partying, maskless. But you couldn't really timestamp it, verify it. Internet sleuths trying to figure it out. I don't know if James Harden was or wasn't at a strip joint, and I also don't know if that has anything to do with this Shams Charania news that half the Rockets roster might not be able to play tonight because of contact tracing for coronavirus concerns. As far as the coronavirus protocols, we'll continue to follow that developing story as James Harden appears to continue to throw bombs into poor Stephen Silas's first game as an NBA head coach, which is scheduled to take place tonight in Houston against the Thunder. But speaking of young athletes potentially acting poorly, there's JuJu Smith-Schuster. And I'm not anti-fun. I'm not anti-celebration. I'm not anti-dancing. In fact, before First Things First ever existed, when many of you first got to know me, it was when I used to sit on the couch a couple times a week across from Colin Cowherd, and he would, at times, rail against athlete fun, and I would be the athlete defender. I can't, however, defend JuJu, and I'll explain why in a moment, and also why some of my colleagues in the media are making me so upset with this. But first, here's Mike Tomlin trying to, well, talk about what JuJu is doing before all of these football games. Here's Tomlin.
And to talk to JuJu, but we're professionals. I doubt any of those antics and things of that nature are legitimate motivating factors as you step into professional stadiums. But it's about respect, and so we'll have a conversation. But I understand it's about the quality of play inside the white lines, and so I'm not seeking comfort or looking for excuses based on our recent performances on things that occur in pregame or things of that nature that are social media related.
All right, so a number of things here. First of all, and in no particular order of importance, first of all, JuJu's not that good of a dancer. Second of all, JuJu at this point is more famous for TikTok than he is receiving. Since Antonio Brown last played with the Steelers, JuJu Smith-Schuster has one 100-yard receiving game. He meanwhile has 3 single-digit yard receiving games. Over the last 2 years, he has fewer receiving yards than Danny Amendola. This year, he has fewer receiving yards than Russell Gage. He's 8 yards ahead of Tim Patrick. He's ranked 44th overall this season. So it's not like he's a star player doing this. And maybe you could argue when the Steelers were winning, who cares? But they're not anymore. Now, do I think this is why they're not winning? Of course not. Do I think this is me, look at me in the ultimate team sport? Yeah, to a degree I do. Do I think this is different than the whole team going on the opposing team's logo as almost a show of force and intimidation? Of course. Do I think JuJu is failing to remember the best advice LeBron James ever gave other athletes, which is keep the main thing the main thing? I do. And by that, LeBron means, and I don't think LeBron came up with it, he's just the first person I heard say it, which is the reason we're famous, the reason we get to be in movies, the reason we get these endorsement deals is because we're great at our sport. So I got to always keep in mind, I got to stay great at the sport or the other stuff goes away. And JuJu hasn't been great at the sport compared to his contemporaries in a couple years now. But I'm not that mad at JuJu. I think it's stupid, and I think it's unnecessary, and I think it's totally different than there's a touchdown celebrating or other stuff you could do pregame that isn't by yourself on the other team's logo on your TikTok feed. I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world, but I think it's unnecessary and poor form, especially when the team is struggling the way it is right now. But that doesn't really bother me that much. What bothers me more than any of this is some of my colleagues and I don't even mean at FS1, I mean media colleagues in general, particularly my generation of media, so under 40, who seemingly have lost the ability, if they ever had it, to ever criticize any athlete behavior. Quick, sports media history. Once upon a time, sports media was wildly unfair to athletes. It was pretty nakedly racist, a lot of it. It was gross. The appeals to authority and teams and management and coaches was over the top, and it made coverage worse, okay? We have now, I fear, overcorrected to such a degree that in some corners, it's considered poor form or out of bounds to ever criticize an athlete for anything. I'm as pro-athlete as they come. Let me give you an example. Remember when Odell was in the hotel room with the IG model in Paris, maybe, possibly, who knows, with a little bit of drugs on the bed? You know what I said the next day on TV? Yeah, that's probably why he practiced as hard as he did. So one day he can be rich and famous enough to, in the offseason, go to a foreign country with a seemingly somewhat random, beautiful stranger and see how the night unfolds. His business, his time. I'm not a guy that's like, why aren't you crunching film? Why aren't you just practicing 24 hours a day? It's unrealistic. But that doesn't mean that when James Harden, for instance, misses the first team practice of the year so he can give, the fourth best rapper with Lil in his name $100,000 and then go party in a Vegas strip club, I got to be like, hey, whatever he wants to do. We've got to be able to say when, I don't know, Dwayne Haskins might have submarined his team's playoff chances so he can go to a strip club in the middle of a pandemic without a mask on and be photographed, that, hey, don't do that. And I think it's also fair to say, hey, JuJu, maybe tone down the TikTok until you're once again one of the 5 best receivers in the AFC North, and your team isn't hurtling towards a crushing end of the season. That doesn't make me anti-athlete. It's pro-common sense. And I hate saying these words because I feel like the old man yelling at a cloud. I feel like I feel like I am becoming what I've never liked. But occasionally, the old man is right. And in this one, stop it. You look ridiculous. I can't believe I'm saying it. And to my fellow millennial, or I don't even know, I was born in 1984. What generation am I? I think I'm a millennial, but I don't know. Whatever it is. If we always defend all athletes in all circumstances, then the defenses are worthless. If there is no nuance to what we will and won't defend, then the defenses don't actually help. So this is not, us being a public scold, but there is a level of, hey, it is professional sports, and there is a level of professionalism. And whether it's Kyrie's IG statement, Kevin Durant's embarrassing interview after the game last night, James Harden, everything he's done the last few weeks, Dwayne Haskins, what he did on Sunday, or even something as small as JuJu putting Mike Tomlin in that position where he's got to answer those questions, it's fellow millennial media. It's okay to say, don't love it. It doesn't make you, what was the old Grantland Rice from 1934 writing about athletes as if they're pieces of property. It's not that. That might be unfair to Grantland Rice, but I don't think so. Speaking of James Harden, before we get to my friend Eric Mangini, report this week, I think yesterday, that the list of possible teams has expanded, or teams that might be interested, to include the Celtics, the Raptors, and the Nuggets. So, you know, at some point,